Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Environment and Performance Committee. My name is Councillor Claire Rylott, and I am the chairman of this committee. Before we move to the agenda this evening, our housekeeping rules are as follows. Restroom facilities are available on this floor for the ladies and down the main stairwell for the gentlemen. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, officers will escort all attendees to the nearest safety point. May I please ask that all persons addressing this meeting do so clearly through the microphone system at all times. I would at this point remind all persons in attendance that this meeting is being streamed live. Please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who is deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain, and if the behaviour persists, they will be asked to leave the meeting. That concludes the housekeeping rules, and we will now move straight into part one of this evening's agenda and address the preliminary items. To receive apologies for absence and notification of any substitute members.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Zavikian, no substitute member. Apologies from Councillor Izard with Councillor Barry Pierpoint substituting, and also apologies from the portfolio holder, Councillor Ann Dorian. Thank you.
Item 2, to sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 13th of February 2023. 2024. Do members agree the minutes, please?
Pink. And a pink. Okay.
Item 3, to receive declarations of interest in respect of any item on the agenda. Does any member of this committee wish to declare any interest in any item on the agenda?
None.
Thank you. Item 4, to answer any written public questions. Are there any?
No questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. That concludes the preliminary items. We will now move into part 2 of tonight's agenda. Our first item of business this evening is the street art policy, which is on page 7 of the agenda and will be presented by the portfolio holder, Councillor Sarah Sharp, supported by Phil Perry, our Assistant Director for Culture and Leisure, and our Interim Cultural Services Manager, Rachel Rowett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this report is to consider proposals for the adoption of the street policy to enable the development of street art in Boston. The street art policy was developed and piloted by South Holland District Council in 2023 with good results, and it is now the intention to work towards adopting the policy across the South and East Lincolnshire Council sub-region. The development of this policy is also listed as an action in the Boston Town Centre strategy. For the purposes of this policy, street art is defined as any work of art on building facades or infrastructure with permission that complements the public space in which it is situated. Such work will not detract, defame or depreciate the area. It could be a painting, land art or sculpture. Graffiti is defined as defacement of public facades or infrastructure without permission by use of paint or another form of marker. This is always a form of criminal damage. The policy sets out how graffiti is currently dealt with and will continue to be dealt with as an act of antisocial behaviour in terms of enforcement and removal. It provides a procedure for giving permission for legal street art, ensuring any street art on council property meets the required standards in terms of subject and content, with a clear process if those standards are not adhered to. It is the intention to work with communities to ensure any proposed street art is suitable and representative of the place, creating a sense of ownership and enhancement to the space. The policy will be tested with a pilot project, working with the community and artists, potentially through the NPO programme. Central Park has been identified as a potential location for this as part of the work to gain green flag status. The policy also enables the potential for using street art to engage with young people and provide the opportunity to work with artists to develop their creativity in dedicated spaces rather than going down the route of illegal graffiti. The report includes examples of where the policy worked well to successfully deliver a street art project and also where it was used to remove street art which did not meet the guidelines. I'd like to request that you note the recommendations of this report, and I welcome your questions and feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Do we have any questions, please? Councillor Marson.
Thank you, Lady Chairman. No, my take on it, we did actually do this many years ago on Ingelo Field, along the fence, and all the children was involved, and they loved it and they made it their area. I think it's fantastic because I think the kids really do make it their own, do you know what I mean, their own area, and they respect it more. And it really did work. It looked lovely and the kids enjoyed doing it. So I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I do like it. Thank you.
Sorry, I hadn't got the speaker on. Councillor Pierpoint.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine's a two-part question. One is, are we going to make it very clear to people out in the marketplace, the public, exactly what the specifications, terms, how this is going to work? Otherwise, people are still going to go out there just spraying things and doing things as they wish on any building. And I think this is, to me, it's going to be a very important message that, you know, people have got to understand that what is the legal stuff and what is not legal. I read the papers today in this report here, and I'm just conscious of the fact that we need to make sure that message is loud and clear, point one, and I'd like to have an answer on it in a second. And the second thing is, are we going to provide specification, very detailed specification of what we're expecting people to supply? And I know we have to send and submit things in advance to be checked out, but you know, I think this needs to be very specified, very detailed specification of what they can and can't do on this particular matter of, you know, street art.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. It will be really made clear, and that's where the pilot project will really come in handy, that we can make sure that's really working first. But yeah, we definitely will be making sure that everybody's aware of what it is. And there was an example where in South Holland, the artist didn't adhere to what they were asked to do, and it was removed and redone. So I think the team have already got a good idea of what needs to be said.
Another question I want to ask you is, the cost of maintaining this, because clearly there's a cost of once this goes up on walls, buildings, or whatever space it appears, there's going to be a cost of maintenance, because somebody's going to do the idiotic thing of spraying it with graffiti stuff, probably, I don't know, unless of course it's got a special film on it where you can't deface the street art, but there's going to be a cost. And is there a cost to the person who wants to do the legal street art for putting it on a building or place or whatever? And who's going to maintain the ongoing cost of any graffiti or damage that's done to that legal street art?
So we're looking at costing, and hopefully this is going to be delivered through the NPO project, which is the money we've got from the Arts Council. So we're currently sorting out year 2 of activity and what that's going to be. So hopefully there'll be enough money within that, and then going forward there's a year 3 and hopefully a year 4. So hopefully maintenance could then be covered through that.
Okay, and last question I'd just like to ask is there any size of the sort of legal artwork that you can do, or is it any size? I mean, is this going to be a specific specification of what size, the maximum size you can actually do this for? Thank you.
Thank you. It will really vary from project to project. So for the Central Park one, if we do it in there, it will be a set size that they will need to stick to. So for example, it will be boards that we put up so that it'll have to be within that specification. For other projects, such as working with Transported, where this policy will also come in, it will depend on the commission. So this commission for the art will be very specific and draw out what the boundaries are.
And just one more last question. I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, but when these artists put this work up on the place or wall or whatever, is there going to be some plaque or something there saying this is a legal street art, so people can identify that this is actually been approved by the council, as opposed to it just appearing there from Banksy or anybody else. Thank you. I think that's very important, that the actual identification that it's been approved.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would want to do plenty of publicity around it as well, so that everybody's clear of where it's come from and what it's for.
Thank you, Councillor Pierpoint. I think there's some very good questions there. Yeah, well done with that. Councillor Welbury, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just following on from Councillor Pierpoint, I'm just interested in the specification for the materials that are being used. Will there be an approved list for the materials or an approved supplier to make sure that they don't wash off in the first floods or the first rains? And will there be a manufacturer that's approved for use? And my other question related to Councillor Pierpoint was the actual length of time that it is going to be used for. Is there a specified length of time? Is it a year, 5 years, 6 months? If there's a waiting list for a particular area, more than one artist, do they get a certain length of time? Thank you.
So I think there's two different types of projects, really. There's the street art wall, which would be less permanent, and that we would have an agreed amount of time that an artist's work would be displayed on that before it could be painted over. And that's more kind of spray paint kind of art, which is probably what would suit the Central Park location. And then there's the more permanent artwork that would come through a funded project, such as with Transported, where there would be an agreed amount of time that it would potentially be a permanent piece of art, potentially. So there's two different types, and it would depend on the commissioning and the project that it was part of. In terms of material, we would take advice from professional artists and people like Transported who have done this type of project before, so that we are using the right materials, that it will be weatherproof and stay as long as we need it to stay. So we would be taking advice from people that have done this sort of thing before.
Yeah, because it's important that it's eco-friendly and ticks all the right boxes as well. Otherwise, the council will get into trouble for it, no doubt. Thank you.
Councillor Pryke.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask a similar point to Barry's about the authorisation process and verification and obviously the duration of these projects. So thank you for beating me to it. That's okay. But I was also going to ask about graffiti in general. And we know that the council removes graffiti that is on council property, quite rightly so. It's quite hard to get Lincolnshire County Council to remove graffiti from their property, their street furniture and so on. But we keep on trying. But graffiti can appear anywhere. And half reading this piece about legal street art, it seems to imply that if graffiti appears on someone else's property, they could retrospectively designate it as street art they approve of and they want it to stay. Now, obviously, the council can and will use the criteria about is it offensive or whatever else, and presumably the council will take enforcement proceedings against owners who don't remove such graffiti from their walls or their property. Is that the case?
Yes, that is the case. So enforcement of graffiti is dealt with by a different department. So I can't speak on their behalf entirely, but it is part of the policy that enforcement does take place.
Councillor Danny, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will support, anything to do with art. I will support, because art is an education, is a knowledge, it's a lot of things in it, and it releases even, your anger, your stress. So it does work. I have few points to discuss where I need some answer from you, because we always talk about the Central Park, where the graffiti will be, because we have only a fenced Central Park. Are you going to build walls, or are you going to put boards, or how are you going to do that?
I think original thinking was there's some boards up behind where the play equipment is. Is that correct? Yeah.
So where there's the kids?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing, which is, I know there is so many questions, there have been very valid questions before I start. Will it be licensed with a license to certain artists if they want to do it again?
Well, we're having the designated places, aren't we, for it? And we'll put it out to sort of artists then can apply.
Yeah.
I know, and similar things. And what Transport are doing is they apply for different artists for some of their projects. People put their name forward, and then they choose who they think is going to work best for that space. So it'd be a similar situation.
Okay. One more thing, Madam Chairman, if I may. I mean, like I say, the art is a very good thing, and I love art. I love to go to, galleries and things like that. Wouldn't be even better, I mean, something extra to have an exhibition of artists, local artists, probably in the town centre, like a marketplace, and move things from the, Central Park to the marketplace and make it more like something to see, probably on Sunday or Saturday or on the weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, we're always looking for different ideas. And
you can play piano, somebody play piano while you are looking at the portraits, or the painting. It's really, it does, because I'm going to share something with you. During the Easter, I went to Toulouse, and I found in the central, one of their main fountains, big one. So people, they bring chess, they put a chair, a table, and anybody can play against them. And it works. They were like, I will show you the pictures later. There were like 10 of them sitting, 10 of them sitting, and the people did just come. If you want to take a chance, you can play. We should probably, encourage this sort of things, arts, games, and people probably would like that. And I think there is a lot of people I did talk to. I think it would be a great idea to come and play chess against someone, or whatever it is.
Absolutely, yeah, the great ideas. Thank you.
But anyway, you get my support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know I've slept since 2019. But I was on the understanding that that fence in Central Park didn't belong to the borough, but you can probably put me right on that, Phil.
The fence doesn't belong to the borough, but we could it's about putting a facade in front of that. We don't want to deface anything that we don't own. And there are other, there are a number of locations we can look at in the park. The idea is to we're really trying to brighten that area up, because people keep saying it's sort of a pretty dark, dim part of the park.
Thank you. I mean, clearly we've got to find areas that do belong to us, which you're obviously on. So I was correct with that one, although I have slept a little since 19. Councillor Pierpoint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is quite a wide topic and subject in respect of management, control, monitoring, etc. Two things. One is how we're going to enforce and monitor graffiti around the area. Have we got somebody full-time walking around checking places to make sure that these things are appearing there, or how are we going to monitor it and enforce it? Because I think that's quite a wide topic that is on somebody's role to keep an eye on it. And then I noticed the other question is that you offer a removal service of that. And is the removal service covering its costs? Because I wouldn't like to think in another 12 months' time we see a bill where it's cost us thousands of pounds for the council to go and remove graffiti off people's buildings, and then we start talking about how do we end up paying thousands of pounds out when we should have managed to charge people the right amount of money in the first place. So enforcing and monitoring, what's the process for that? That's what I'm interested to hear.
Enforcement monitoring is maintained through other departments of the council. We have public art in Boston. We've done a lot of work over the years with public art, and actually street art started on the B&M gardens with using like a vinyl designs, which was so we do have a good reputation actually in Boston. There are areas of Boston that does get a lot of graffiti. The BTEC operatives do a lot of work in looking after some of those areas as quite well. There are a lot of because we're in terms of the town, we have the street cleaning, we have nothing. So when things are picked up, reported through, then our neighbourhood colleagues do pick up and look at. This policy is about commissioning street art and doing it properly. There are a number of factors within the policy that demonstrate how it works. we're able to show it in South Holland where we first piloted it. It did actually work, where an artist decided to change the work they wanted to do. So we did end up having to remove it. So I mean, what we'll do is, as we go forward, of course, we'll be testing and monitoring, and then we will be reporting back to, should this be supported through Cabinet, we'll end up going back to Cabinet in a year's time to look at how it's developed, how it's worked through, and what lessons we've learned as we go forward.
Yeah, it all sounds very good, Phil, but I'm conscious of the fact that, we've got to keep an eye on this, and somebody's got to keep monitoring this to make sure that once these things are done, other graffiti is not appearing anywhere, and we end up spending a lot of time going around cleaning other people's mess up. The removal service that you're offering, is that running at a loss, or are we just covering our costs? Are we keeping an eye on what it costs to remove all the old graffiti?
I don't have all the details, but I think you find that the costs are the land, whoever owns the property, the costs will go back to this can be used by anybody. A parish can pick this up. Anybody could use the policy. The idea is to try and make sure that any street art that people do want to commission and take forward is done properly in a managed way. In terms of Boston itself, we would monitor it the same way we do with our existing street art that we have dotted around the town. But we're also hopeful that this is more than just Boston. The borough as a whole would be able to benefit from a policy like this.
I thank you for your comments, but it doesn't give me the reassurance I'm looking for, but thank you.
If it's helpful to the committee, I look after the EnviroCrime enforcement contract, and our enforcement agents, Kingdom, are the ones that will deal with illegal graffiti. I think the sort of graffiti we're talking about here, or street art, is permitted. The graffiti that we don't want to see, the illegal graffiti, is an environmental crime, and that will be enforced by our enforcement agents, along with littering, fly tipping, and those other environmental offences. The challenge is obviously identifying who's done it and then serving a fixed penalty notice on the offender. But it is a crime that we are resourced to tackle.
I mean, my point is that once the legal artwork goes up, somebody and some person will want to do their own artwork near to it, or beside it, or on top of it, and that's when the problem starts. And I'm concerned about the control and making sure that all these things are managed. And I'm not getting the assurance that that's something we've got our finger on the pulse, because once people see legal artwork going up, somebody want to do the illegal artwork, graffitis on their own, and just get on with it, and it'll just snowball and multiply, and that's what I'm concerned about. Then there's the cost on top of that, which also worries me, because there's a massive cost to keep cleaning it all up. That's my concerns. All right, thank you.
Councillor Welbury.
Thank you. I'm just coming back to Councillor Danny. Councillor Danny, I'm organising some events in the marketplace with Ian Dunn, the market manager. We are having a Parisian-style art market.
Oh.
We're also having Battle of the Buskers, and we're also having a flea market. They're the 3 events for the summer. I will be coming to your cafe very, very soon with some posters. They're all done. They've all been approved. They've all been approved by comms, the posters. So yeah, things are happening in the marketplace, and I will be looking to you for support. Brilliant. Thank you.
Councillor Danny, did you want to come back?
Yes, just on the comments that my colleague Councillor Fairpoint has made is about the cost and the legal. I'm pretty sure that the council will have probably a banner or a sign to say that anything illegal, that the person will be prosecuted, because I think the CCTV now is more sophisticated around the town. So I will presume that people will be caught on if anybody does anything. And on the top of that, we have 2 antisocial behavior new officers, which is there always on town. So I think there is a monitoring which can probably work.
Yeah, thank you. Our experiences to date have been that actually the residents of Boston have been very, very appreciative of what's gone in, and we had a bit of damage to a fish once, at the other side of B&M, but as so far, it's been so good. We haven't had too many problems. Of course, there are cycles, there are problems where we do get acts of antisocial behaviour or vandalism and graffiti, but there are patches where graffiti is quite prevalent. The BTAC operatives have regularly dealt with those aspects, and for this, if it's a wall where that anybody could come on and do, then that gets painted over regularly, and any offensive or inappropriate graffiti will just be completely covered on those spaces. It doesn't stop people going to tag other things, but tagging is where sort of our colleagues pick up anyway and looking for intelligence. And actually, in the past, there have been a number of young people who have gone out tagging and actually turned into very good artists in the end, and have changed and now do some work. In South Holland, there's a case where that has happened.
I mean, I do note members' concerns, but I do think we also have to remember that this has been tested out in South Holland in 2023, and obviously it has worked there, and that is why they are now looking to adopt this policy across the whole partnership. But I do note your concerns, but I'm sure that that will be taken away with and discussed further. And I think the feedback that you've given is really, really good. Is there anybody else that would like to say anything on this topic? No, thank you very much then. Thank you. Our second item of business this evening is the Q3 Performance Monitoring Report. This is on page 29 of the agenda and will be presented by our Group Manager for Transformation and Insights, Suzanne Rolfe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this is the usual quarterly performance report for scrutiny for Q3. So as at the end of December, the majority of performances are no better than target, and the full detail is in Appendix A. The purpose of the report tonight is to help you as a committee to identify items of interest for your future work programme. These are indicators of performance. They can't give you a full picture on their own, but they can point you in the direction that might be of interest to you. For example, you might want to see more on some of the areas that are not hitting their targets. They're marked as red. There is commentary in the report, but if you have more in-depth questions or wanted to know more about any of those areas, then a separate item on your work programme would allow you to do that. Alternatively, you might want to have a look at some of the areas that are green, that are better than target, so that we can celebrate that good performance and share some good practice and learning. The third type of measure that we have are the trend measures. So sometimes we don't have a target in place. We're just looking at performance quarter on quarter, looking at how that tracks over time. And again, you might want to know more about one of those areas and see what that overall picture is telling us. So if you have any questions on the specific measures in front of you, I'll try to help with those. But again, then when we move into the work plan area, there might be items that you want to look at on that one as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Well, Councillor Pierpoint, what have you got to say?
Can I just ask a question about the trend? That means nothing to me, and I'm not really sure what we're looking at besides a few numbers down each column. Surely, can't we have some sort of benchmark there to work to? I don't think trend means anything to anybody. Whether it's 72, I'm on page 42, 72%, 80, 78. Yeah, I mean, why not? You've got a target column. Why not put something in there? Let's see if we can try and work to a target rather than just a trend. A trend's telling you one thing, but if we're benchmarking against numbers and against percentages, they ought to be in the column, I believe. Then we can see what we're looking at. But trending, to me, doesn't tell us anything. Are we right, wrong, indifferent? Because from 72 to 79 on that top column there, I mean, you know, if it was 90% that we should be looking at, then we're below the 90% target, you know what I mean? So I just think the trend thing doesn't really, it's a waste of time from my point of view, what you're telling us. It's nothing to work on. It's like clutching straws in the air. And I'm a great believer, if you're going to have targets, let's have a target, because I've worked in targets all my life. So that's point one. The other thing I noticed is on page, let's have a look. Page 35, that is a red area. I know it's not much difference from 134 to 120, but what would you say average speed of answering in seconds? Is that really that important in seconds? I don't quite get what we're saying on that one. I don't understand what you're trying to tell us. So I need that explaining in a bit more detail. And then the other one was on page 33, where you talk about the homelessness on the second column down. That one's 70%, but we're actually up on 84. So that's quite different. That's quite interesting to see that we're actually above something rather than below it. So trend, I'm not sure what it means, and I'd like you to be a bit more specific. And is it worth putting it in there at all, or can we have some numbers in there that's got something meaningful? And what happened to the speed thing on customer contacts on page 35? Thank you.
Thank you. So trends, first of all, sometimes we don't have a target that we're aiming to. So for these first ones around homelessness, it's absolutely clear we want to hit 70%. So whether we do or not is important. Some of our other measures are more around working out what's going on around there. So it might be number of visitors to the leisure facilities. We don't have a specific target yet because we don't have that back data to know what would be the right target. So we collect that for the first year or a little bit longer in some cases so that we have that data to set a good target. There are some of our other trend measures where what we're trying to do is work out what's going on, maybe with footfall in the town area. And that data then feeds into the policies that we make. So they're not about our performance as such. It's working out what the data is telling us that then moves into a policy document or a decision that we make as the council. So we have the two different types alongside because they have different purposes, if that makes sense. And we can come back to that. The calls in seconds was around making sure that we are quickly answering the calls to customer services. But there's been a lot of work this year, which Councillor Sharp's been leading on. So I'm sorry, I should have asked her to stay, about looking at exactly what we're trying to do with customer contact. And they're changing the measures so that that particular measure won't be in for the year that we're moving into now, because we don't want to encourage people to quickly get off the phone. What we want to do is deal with the query that they're coming in with. So we're looking at some different measures for that, but it's still good that we are answering the calls within a certain amount of time. And excuse me. The homelessness one is really good news. So that one you can see from the past data that's on there. The previous quarters, we've never hit that target before, but this quarter it's up at 84%. So again, that's showing that we monitor the performance where there have been issues. We've said in the past reports, this is what we're going to do to get the performance back on track. And there you can see that it has hit that. So yeah, really good news on that one.
Just going back to the trend one, sorry, Madam Chairman. Are you saying then, so I can get this clear in my mind, because I can't understand. Are you saying that trend means we haven't got a full year's worth of numbers to put a benchmark in there or a target mark in there? Is that what you're saying?
In some cases, yes, we'll record that for a year or longer to be able to see what is an accurate target, what should we be aiming for. But in other cases, it's outside of our control. So it's not a measure of our performance, it's a data set that we're reporting.
Yeah, I'm sorry to keep coming back, but I'm you know, if we were setting a program out for the next 12, 18 months, we'd put some numbers in what we want to achieve in our target. We want to know really what we're looking to achieve. And you do your research, your fact finding, you do all your workings out to get a target that you think is what is achievable, and then you see what happens from there. And then the quarters that you've written down here, you put the numbers actually that achieved and arrived at, then you can see whether you're on target or not. I just think the trend thing, as much as I understand what you're saying, I think it's meaningless to people around this table. What are we actually measuring those numbers against? We're not. We're just looking at a load of numbers that just tells us that that's what you've the trend is. And I just don't think that's, to me, it doesn't make sense. And and there's a lot of trends in here rather than actuals or targets. It's a bit disappointing, Suzanne. And it's not explained in this document what trend means either. Okay.
Yeah, I'll improve that for the next time, a bit more detail. But I think that's also the opportunity of putting something on the work plan. So then you can have a look at what is that showing us? Is a trend up or down a good thing or not? It really depends on our policy, whether something is good or not. So it needs a bit more detail. And I think some of those areas might be good to look at.
But you've now got quarters 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and whatever. You've got enough data there now to work off to put targets on every one of them rather than a trend. And my attitude is that we ought to be seeing numbers in those columns now. You've got enough information to see how those trends have been going to formulate a target that you can think this we ought to try and achieve. And yes, some targets you'll hit on, some targets you won't. But I think if you've got a target to work to, you've got some point of going to try and achieve something. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pierpoint and Suzanne for answering. Councillor Pryke.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about trends as well, I'm afraid. So again, you got inversed. That's fine. Now, I know that councils can, to a greater or lesser extent, choose their own targets and things they can aim to do, and those targets can change over time. Now, you've indicated, Suzanne, in your reply to Councillor Pierpoint, that some of these trend items could become targets soon, I hope. What I think we should be doing as a scrutiny committee is examining these stats a little more closely. For example, on the homelessness ones. Yes, whatever it is, the target was 70% and we achieved 84% of preventing harm from homelessness. But do we also look at what happens 1 year later? Are the clients that we have got into housing somehow or other fallen out again within a period of time and are repeat customers to us? And that would be quite useful because, as I understand it, housing is not terribly stable for a lot of people who we have to help. And it would be useful to know if we are seeing not quite the same people all the time, but whether some or what percentage of our customers have presented with a similar problem 6 months ago, year ago, whatever. Now, I know that would be difficult because people suffering homelessness move around much more than people who've got stable housing. So we may not have those stats because they last claimed in Grimsby a year ago, or they'll claim in Peterborough next year, and we'll never know that. Is there any sort of guidance from the profession on that? Are there any academic studies that we can have a look at, for example? You would know far more about that than we would. That's one thing. On the rough sleepers point, I was asked the other day by somebody connected with Centrepoint Outreach whether Boston knows about the deaths of rough sleepers in Boston Borough area. Now, I don't know whether you collect those stats. I've never seen them, but I'm led to believe that 4 rough sleepers have died in the last 12 months in Boston, which to them is rather high. There was a young man a couple of weeks ago, I believe. That's one thing. The other thing about the trend business, on the number of long-term empty properties brought back into use, this is on page 34, we've got some zeros. Does that mean we're not trying? It seems remarkable that we haven't brought any long-term empty properties back over those 2 quarters, and we don't know about the other 2 quarters. On the improved properties, I know that the team based in East Lindsey who are trying to promote energy improvements for properties off gas have had great difficulty finding people in the Boston Borough area who qualify for the improvements, mainly because the households earn more than 33,000 a year. And there's not that many households who don't have gas who earn less than 33,000 a year. So although they can provide insulation, double glazing, a new porch, even a heat pump, a lady in South Holland got a heat pump, which I think is the most expensive item that anyone ever got. In Boston, we're struggling to find people who qualify. And that applies to, I think, pretty well all the rural wards. It certainly applies to Curtin and Frampton ward. And we have a lot of properties who don't have gas. But on the whole, they have fairly good quality housing. So they don't qualify for this sort of aim. So I'm wondering whether the properties improved intervention are the ones who have benefited from the energy initiative. I don't have any direct stats from them, but I do know they have difficulty finding people who qualify with us. I don't know whether we do any other improvements. I've not heard of any. But it's really something we ought to have a target for, because we have an awful lot of substandard housing, especially in the town. So that's a sort of plea for when we come to revise these targets and trend things and so on in future, that we tighten things up a bit, please.
Yeah, just on your last point, Councillor Pryke, the number of properties improved through council intervention, I think, relates to housing standards. So that's different altogether to the housing improvements you're talking about that are delivered through the Sustainable Warmth programme. So
I didn't know that. So.
Okay, and the sustainable, in terms of the thresholds that you described, the maximum income threshold, for example, and the types of interventions that are installed in properties, they're all governed by, they're all set by government targets. That's delivered through Sarah Baker's Green Homes team based in East Lindsey, but they deliver for the whole partnership. So all those income thresholds you talked about are set by government. We don't have any flexibility over that, unfortunately. But this PI you're talking about here particularly doesn't relate to that. It relates to housing standards. So those are properties where somebody complains about damp or mould or unsafe conditions. Our staff then go in, do a household inspection, and if there's anything that is unsafe and doesn't meet standard, then they'll serve a notice. That will trigger an intervention, which will then correct that issue. And I think that's what's been recorded here.
Thank you for pointing that out. It reminds me of another problem. A lot of tenants in particular have great difficulty getting their landlords to correct, in particular, mould problems. Does this mean that we've only served 12 notices in 1 quarter on, say, landlords to improve their rotten premises?
Yeah, I'll need to get some more information so I can go back to the housing team on this and your wider points around homelessness and rough sleepers and just find out a bit more information for you. And I think that's one of those areas where if we can look in more depth, if that's a particular interest, and I'm not sure if that's this committee or the Corporate and Community Committee, but it might be that more detailed response to some of the questions can come forward.
I think with more
Yeah,
information.
I think
it would
actually,
be very
Suzanne, it's C&C. Yeah, I think we're going a bit off track with it, but C&C could, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Have you got anything else to add, Councillor Pryke? Thank you. I think the points that have been made basically are we'd like to see targets rather than trend, and I fully agree with that. Trend says nothing; it tells us nothing. We don't know whether we're on target, off target, or whatever. So it would be good in there to see some targets really. So thank you for suggesting that. Is there anything else that anybody you would like to add? Sorry, Councillor Danny. Thank you.
Chairman, I will just be brief. There is two things I want to touch on. Is the number of verified rough sleepers. I mean, how do you do that? Because I do remember that we used to go and count them at night and see who want to be. How have we counted the latest numbers?
The rough sleeper team provide that data. I don't know exactly how they do it, but I can find out.
The other question, which is sometimes strikes me, how do we deal with the rough sleepers if we want to give them a home? Do we check anything? Because what I noticed lately, there is an increase of rough sleepers from the EU, European countries. And I think there is two of them front of Aldridge. One of them is making a nice bedroom down there. So it's all boxed. It doesn't look nice for the town center. Yeah. So it's a lot of clothes. So my concerns here, because if they're sleeping there, do we have to give them a home? If we do so, do we follow any procedures with their migration, status? If they're allowed to be in the country, or they don't have a visa, or they don't have a working visa, whatever, is there any procedures you probably deal with to see before you give them anything?
I'll speak to the housing team and get some information on that. I think there has been a report to the other committee and that I might be able to circulate that, but if not, I'll get some details for you.
Yeah, thank you. If you can get that, I will really appreciate it, because we are not a very rich town. We may fall in that kind of domino effect. If two will get, the rest will be on the street. And I can assure you that before we knew it, Boston will be probably with a lot of rough sleeping. The second thing I want to touch on which is, I mean, it sounds probably a broken record to talk about the trend. It's just about the market stall occupancy, because we have 62% and then we have 60% and then trend only. We surely know how many stalls we run during the year. We should have the figure there. I think we should have a target. I mean, that's how the market, when it was in its peak, for example, 150 stalls. Now we are just having probably, which is I'm pretty sure is between 30 to 35 Wednesday and Saturday. So it's not many. So we could be less than 60%, because the 60% doesn't give me a scope. If we were renting 30 on Wednesday and 32 probably on Saturday, how can we justify 60%? Was it just probably 40 next time or less?
That's one of the areas where we're collecting that data after lockdown and COVID. We've collected the data up till now, and then we'll be able to set a target for that. But it also depends on what work we're doing with the market as to where do you want your target to be? Is it to maintain the figures that we've got now? Are we looking to improve? So it'd be for the portfolio holder to have a look at what the data is telling us and to set a target for that. But I'll take that back as well. Just talking about the trends as well, some of these around number of properties improved, as we were talking about, it's very difficult to set a target for that because we don't know which decent homes are going to come forward. So that's one of the reasons why we can't always set a target, but I will take that back.
I completely agree with you. At certain items, you cannot have a target because they vary. They can go up or down. That's totally. But like the marketplace and certain things, I think we can have the number justified. I think.
Yeah, I fully agree, Suzanne. Number of properties improved through council intervention. You don't know who's going to knock on your door. It depends on that tenant coming to us, doesn't it? But like Anton rightly said, Councillor Danny rightly said, we've got enough figures to put down how many stalls we're expecting in the marketplace. COVID was an awful long time ago. We've moved on the last couple of years. So there should be enough information there. Right, like you rightly said, we've got 50 stalls at the minute. That's what we're looking for, or we're looking for more. So again, a trend only is not a good answer for us really. We could do with more figures. Thank you.
Just a quick question, because I think the market improvement plan came to your last meeting, did it? Was there mention of the target at that point? I don't know. I wasn't around, but I'll find out. But I think as part of that would be really useful to have that in there.
Thank you, Suzanne. Councillor Pierpoint.
Suzanne, are you responsible for page 54? I mean, does it come under your remit? Can I ask you a question, or do I just have to ask generally? It's the tracker. Right. Just want to ask a question.
But yes, I know the tracker.
Right. Okay. So according to this, we are targeting to save by 31, 32, 42 million odd quid, and yet we've only put ourselves down for 24. I don't quite understand how that works, because if we're looking to do 42 and yet we're projecting by 31, 32 in the brown bar things, 24 million. Why have we done that? What's the reason for that?
So that's the cumulative saving that we're aiming for.
So we want to do 42 as a group of 3 councils, but we're only going to do 24. That's what we're saying.
No, I think it's all together. So it's year on year together. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't. I don't understand it. I'm just trying to work out why we're saying we're going to do 42 million savings on the blue target line, yet on the brown orangey total target it's 42.
Yeah.
So am I misreading this wrong then?
The blue is the target, which is the 42. The orange is what we've already identified to date overall.
Right.
So already, even though we're not there in 31, 32, that amount is already banked from year on year savings.
And again, there's nothing on this document to tell us that, so we're not really understanding what you're saying. And I think we need to have more clarity on these documents. What you know what you're talking about. I don't follow it. So if we could have a few more notes to accompany this, so we can follow it. I just don't understand what we're saying. That's all. I think it's important for members here to follow what's going on, rather than you just tell us that, so I wouldn't have to ask a question. Well, I wasn't in this committee before.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's for people like you that haven't been at that explained before.
Correct. Thank you very much. I've just been put right here by
it's target and actual, isn't it, Suzanne? I think it's actually the description is probably a bit misleading. So it's effectively target's the blue, actual savings banked, as Suzanne said, is the orange.
Thank you, Councillor Pierpoint. And Councillor Welbury.
Yes, just about visitor numbers. What's the criteria? I cannot remember what the criteria is for visitors number. Is it into the marketplace, or where is it? Is it across the whole borough? On page 39. How do you collect your data?
So the visitor numbers on that page is to the Jeff Moulder Leisure Centre.
Ah, right.
Yeah, that's under leisure and culture. So that's specifically the Jeff Moulder Leisure Centre and the number of swims. We do have some footfall data, which is within the town, but that's collected in a different way.
Right. Because the number of swims is down quite considerably. Is that because it's closed for a period of time?
Sometimes it's a quarterly issue, but that is quite down on the previous Q3. So I'll ask the question.
Yeah. So are the visitor numbers as well, aren't they? If that's to do with the leisure centre.
Thank you, Councillor Welbury. I'm just wondering if we ought to have another target in there for internet. Lack of. Councillor Scoot.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. leading on from Councillor Welbury, the Q3, could that be of any change from the council running it to the independents running it? Is that why the numbers are down? Do we know?
I'll ask the question. I don't know the
Thank you.
background, but I'll
Thank you.
find out.
Is it also because it was taken over from a private partnership? So maybe it's the way that the data is collected now.
I think we ought not to speculate. I think Suzanne said she will
Yeah.
go out and find out, and we could sit here all night speculating the reason. I think if Suzanne finds out and shares that information, that will resolve it for you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? No? Thank you very much. So everything has been noted that we have commented on. Thank you, Karen. Our final item this evening is the work programme. As members are aware, we currently have a member working group in progress, and I would invite Councillor Anton Danny to provide the committee with a brief verbal update on the activity of the group, as is required by the parent committee on such reviews. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. At the moment, we haven't got anything further than last time when I briefed you. We're still waiting for some questions to be answered by Andy Fisher. However, we're pushing for that, and we will see the outcome. And as I said, it's we will have soon another meeting, and hopefully we get some answers then, and then we're gonna brief when we attend this meeting. But at the moment, it's still the same as it is. Thank you.
So have you got another meeting lined up?
Yes, in due course. I think so far, probably in 2 weeks' time, we're going to sit again and talk and discuss our targets. Yeah, so we will discuss. So I counted from today, Monday. Sorry. So as I say, next week. So we will discuss the points which is we send to Andy Fisher, and we'll see how to improve, you know, because there's a lot of things we discuss about the parkings, and we would like them to be implemented because it will help the town and it will make it easy for people. Once we get all the details back, definitely we'll inform you. Thank you.
Will that be your final meeting then, or because is that the 5th meeting that you've had?
It's not the 5th. I think this will be the 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Yeah, we done 3, and the next week is the 4th one. Is that correct? You didn't attend that one. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Sorry, my memory of it, and I'm not looking at my diary. I was absent from the February meeting, which was the main one when information was requested by the various members. Some of the members have got the information they wanted, but others have not. We're going to have a March meeting, but it didn't happen as we expected because a number of people thought it had been cancelled, although it hadn't. There was an April meeting. Sorry, this next week is the April meeting. We were, and I think we still are, hoping to draw up some conclusions, provided we've got all the information we've asked for and have shared it amongst each other. So that's what we're aiming to do, but we may need another meeting.
If I may say, Madam Chairman, yes, we may need another meeting, and we may need probably 2 meetings, because the things, you know, it's not just to discuss the things, we have to follow what we have discussed and what we can implement and what we can work on, because 1 meeting will not be enough, I think, in my opinion. We will need to do more work, and I think instead of having a monthly meetings, we should have probably 1 every 3 months, and that will give us a scope and give us more time to probably find out more, and then we go from there. All we have to do is just a push for things to be, for the town to be improved, and that's our aim.
Thank you, Councillor Danny, for the update. Mr. Allen, do you have anything to add or comment on in respect to the first meeting of the next year? Thank you.
Nothing much to add, Madam Chairman, except to say that you're starting to see your next meeting in June sort of taking shape in the work programme. I think there's likely to be another paper coming forward because we're looking at developing an environment policy for the partnership. So we have an environment policy for East Lindsey and for Boston, but we're looking to combine those and create or align those and create a partnership policy for the partnership, an environment policy for the partnership. So we'll be bringing that forward in June. But other than that, nothing more to add, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for